At the wedding, the millionaire made fun of the cleaner's daughter on the piano, but soon regretted. The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Marlowe Hotel glittered like frozen raindrops, scattering light across the marble floor. It was a night of celebration, the kind of wedding where the champagne never stopped flowing, the flowers cost more than most people's yearly rent, and the air itself smelled expensive. Guests in glittering gowns and tuxedos moved from table to table, laughing in that polite, moneyed way that always felt just a little too loud. In one corner, away from the swirl of silk and diamonds, a man in a light blue uniform shirt and navy apron stood perfectly still, as if rooted to the spot. Yellow cleaning gloves still covered his hands. His name was Samuel, and while everyone else had come to celebrate, he had come to work. Yet tonight, he wasn't watching the floors for spills. He was watching his daughter. Amara was 8, small for her age, wearing a plain navy dress that had been ironed until the seams stood straight. A simple white ribbon tied her curls back, but no bow could hide the tremor in her hands. She was seated on the bench of a piano so glossy it reflected her face. The piano wasn't meant for her. She was only there because the man of the night, the groom millionaire father, Leonard Hale, had decided she should be. It happened so fast. She'd been standing quietly by the wall, holding a tray of empty glasses she'd been helping her father collect. Then Hale spotted her, his sharp silver hair catching the light as he leaned toward a group of laughing guests. "Hey, you!" he called across the room, voice booming. "Little one, come here." Amara hesitated, glancing at her father. Samuel gave the smallest shake of his head, but it was too late. Hale was already beckoning her forward with a crooked finger, his grin widening like a man who just found his evening's entertainment. When she reached him, he motioned toward the piano. "Ever played one of these?" "A little," she murmured. "Perfect," he said with a mock clap of his hands. "Let's see what the cleaner's daughter can do. Give us a show." A ripple of laughter spread through the surrounding guests. Not all of them laughed. A few shifted uncomfortably, but enough did to make Amara's ears burn. Samuel's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. He knew how quickly speaking up could get him fired. Amara slid onto the bench. Her feet dangled far above the pedals. The millionaire leaned over her, pointing at the open sheet music. "Beethoven," he said dramatically, tapping the page with a perfectly manicured finger. "Do you even know what these squiggles mean?" Some of the guests chuckled again. Amara felt her throat tighten. She knew every note on the page, but her voice refused to come out. "Come now," Hale continued, lowering his voice so only she could hear, though the venom dripped in every word. "Don't embarrass yourself. Or worse, embarrass him." His eyes flicked toward Samuel. It was a dagger wrapped in silk. She placed her hands on the keys. Her fingers shook. The sound of her own heartbeat was louder than the distant clinking of champagne flutes. She could feel the weight of every eye in the room pressing down on her small frame. Hale stepped back slightly, but stayed close enough that she could hear his breath. "Well?" he asked, smiling like a cat waiting to see a mouse fail. The humiliation sat heavy on her chest. She could sense her father's presence behind her, standing silent, trapped between his job and his love for her. She wanted to disappear, to let the floor swallow her whole, but she also wanted to prove she was more than what this man thought she was. Her first note was a whisper, weak. She stopped, swallowing hard. Hale's smirk deepened. "Don't worry," he said loudly enough for the nearby guests to hear. "Not everyone's meant to perform." A few people laughed again. It cut deeper this time. Samuel took a small step forward, but Amara, without looking up, pressed her fingers down again. This time the note rang louder, then another and another. But before she could find the courage to play in earnest, Hale interrupted, chuckling as he straightened up. "Tell you what," he said, "why don't you just play something simple? You know, like chopsticks." The crowd laughed openly now. Amara's eyes blurred. Her hands slipped from the keys, falling into her lap. She felt heat crawl up her neck. Her father's fists clenched at his sides. Every muscle in his body screamed to pull her away from this, but he knew the cost. The man in front of them could ruin him with a single word, and that, Hale knew, was the power he held. For a long moment, no one moved. The laughter faded into murmurs, glasses clinking as guests drifted back into their own conversations. But for Samuel, the room might as well have been holding its breath. Amara sat there, small and still, staring at the black and white keys like they were the edge of a cliff. Her eyes glistened, but she hadn't let a single tear fall. That stubborn strength, he'd seen it before in moments when life had demanded too much from her too soon. "Come on now, sweetheart," Hale said, his tone dripping with false pity. "No shame in walking away before you make a mistake." The words were meant to push her down to finish the humiliation, but something shifted in Amara's gaze. Her fingers rose again, not timidly this time, but with a quiet certainty. She straightened her back. Samuel recognized the change instantly. He had seen it years ago, when she first touched the battered upright piano left in the storage room of the community center. She'd taught herself every note she knew, practicing in secret when he worked late shifts. She didn't have lessons, just stubbornness and a love for sound that nothing could take away. Without a word, she pressed the first key. The note cut through the air like a drop of water in a silent room. Then came the second, then a cascade that followed with the precision of someone who had played this piece 100 times in her mind. It wasn't chopsticks. It wasn't even the simple tune she usually started with. It was Beethoven, exactly the page Hale had mocked her for, and it was flawless. The chatter in the room stilled. Guests turned their heads. The sound swelled, Amara's small hands flying across the keys with a confidence that had been hiding beneath the fear. She didn't look at Hale. She didn't look at the crowd. She just played. By the time she reached the middle of the piece, the room was silent except for the music. Even the clinking glasses had stopped. Samuel's throat tightened, pride and relief warring with the anger still burning in his chest. Hale, for the first time that evening, wasn't smiling. When the final notes rang out, Amara let her hands hover above the keys before lowering them gently into her lap. She exhaled slowly, as if releasing every ounce of tension she had been holding. Then the applause began. It wasn't polite clapping, it was genuine. A few guests even stood, their eyes on the little girl who had just turned the room upside down. Hale forced a smile, but the stiffness in his jaw betrayed him. "Well, perhaps there's more talent here than I expected," he said, his voice trying to sound light. Samuel stepped forward now, taking off his gloves. "She's had that talent for years," he said evenly, his voice steady but firm. "Just never had someone like you to put it on display for their amusement." The statement wasn't loud, but the weight in it carried. A few guests exchanged uneasy glances. Someone coughed into their hand. Hale cleared his throat. "It was a compliment," he said quickly, but no one quite believed him. Amara slid off the bench and walked to her father. He knelt, so they were eye level. "You did perfect," he whispered, and for the first time that night her small smile returned. They turned to leave, but a voice from the crowd stopped them. It was an older woman in an emerald gown, the bride's grandmother. "Young lady," she called, "would you honor us with another piece?" Amara hesitated. Samuel looked at her and nodded. She returned to the bench, and this time she played something soft, a melody Samuel recognized from the nights she hummed herself to sleep. It wasn't grand or flashy, but it filled the room with warmth. By the time she finished, Hale was standing awkwardly near the piano, his hands clasped. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice quieter now. Amara looked at him for a long moment, then simply replied, "I just wanted to play." And somehow that stung more than any sharp remark could have. Samuel took her hand, and together they walked out of the ballroom. Outside, the night air was cool and fresh, a relief after the suffocating tension inside. "Dad?" Amara asked as they reached the street. "Yeah? I think I played my best because I wanted you to be proud." He squeezed her hand. "Amara, I've been proud of you every single day since the moment you were born. Tonight just reminded me how strong you really are." They walked on, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. Somewhere behind them, in the grand ballroom, Leonard Hale stood alone at the piano, his reflection staring back from its polished surface. He didn't touch the keys. For the first time in years, he found himself wondering when he'd last done something without thinking about how it made him look. For the rest of the night, the sound of that little girl's music stayed with him, not because of how well she played, but because of how wrong he'd been. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.